What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and to continue my brand new series of Studio Ghibli reviews, I'm here to let you know that Kiki's delivery service is NoPerfectMovie. And in this film, 13-year-old witch Kiki, played by Kirsten Dunst, leaves home to spend a year of life on her own because that's a rite of passage for witches. And along the way, she comes across a friendly baker named Osono, played by Trez MacNeille, who allows Kiki to stay at her bakery slash home in exchange for operating the store alongside her and delivering goods, and it gives Kiki the idea to start her own delivery service. And as a result, she makes various new friends and really comes into her own as a free thinking, independent woman. And this film really captures the structure and atmosphere of My Neighbor Totoro, where there isn't a free act structure in regards to story and plot, but in character development. For starters, Kirsten Dunst is incredibly fantastic in the English dub. She probably gives one of the best performances in any English dub of a Studio Ghibli film. I love that she brings this youthful enthusiasm and joy at being this one girl who all of a sudden has the chance to prove that she can be an independent and responsible adult. But you also see along the way through her performance and the incredible animation where she has all of these various amounts of character expressions and reactions that show that she really does feel the pressure of trying to prove herself not just to adults but to kids her age. But one of the best scenes in particular is Kiki going to an outhouse at the beginning of the morning, and when Osono's husband shows up, who's not initially fond of her, she immediately runs back in, waits for him to leave, and then runs back to her room in a panic. Just in one scene without any dialogue whatsoever, you already understand that she's desperate to prove to people that she's not weak, because once she arrives to this new town, every adult before Osono just viewed her as a stereotypical kid that's young and naive and doesn't really know anything about the world. And even though at first she kind of is, she is willing to prove to herself and to others that she can work hard, that she can make really tough choices. When she starts off her delivery service, it of course doesn't go as planned, but she's willing to prove that she can learn from her mistakes. If she damages a parcel, she can take extra time in order to repair it, and she receives so much gratitude and respect from her elders for those exact same reasons. But what's so interesting about the character development in this movie in particular is that Kiki's not the only one who really comes into her own as a person. Almost every side character in the movie has this opportunity to mature as a person. For example, Osono, the baker, who's played very well by Trez MacNeille. She's an expecting mother, so when Kiki comes into her life, she sees that this is an opportunity to prove that she can be a good mother when she takes Kiki in. She passes on advice on how to talk to boys, she assigns her chores in the bakery, she even looks after her when Kiki gets sick at one point. And that was one of the reasons that she became my favorite character on the first viewing, and she's still one of them, but having rewatched it this morning, I think one of my new favorites is actually Janie and Garofalo as this artist Ursula that Kiki meets along the way of her first delivery. And as they're chatting about their different careers, Ursula finds one particular thing in common where each of them feel as if they've experienced artistic block, where at one point they didn't have to think about how good they were at magic or being a painter, but then one day they suddenly realized that for whatever reason, they just didn't have that spark to them that made them feel so creative and inspired. But Ursula points out the more you spend time just letting life sink in, giving the opportunity for yourself to breathe, you'll find something brand new that will inspire you to be more creative. And that advice in particular was one of the best scenes in the film, and actually I really felt the sense that Kiki learned from that piece of advice over the course of the movie. Hell, even Osono's husband, who's played by Brad Garrett for like 2 lines, I think, at best, when he first meets Kiki, he doesn't really know how to feel about her. And the fact that Osono let her move in without asking him, that definitely probably added to the apprehension. But the more he spends time with Kiki and the more he acknowledges her contributions to the bakery, he pays her back in full by building a sign to advertise her delivery service. You can easily see this as a metaphor for him reacting to the sudden news that him and his wife are expecting, and of course he doesn't know how to feel about it. He's incredibly afraid, but as he spends more time getting adjusted to it, he feels as if he's ready. It's so interesting how you can have side characters like that with little to no dialogue whatsoever. And for those who are kind of wondering how I feel about the Disney version versus the Japanese version, the Japanese version is good, but I felt like the voice actors didn't really bring that much new to the table. And if anyone's gonna say, oh, you just like Disney dubs, absolutely not true. If you've seen my Castle in the Sky review, you know for a fact that the Japanese version is a hell of a lot more serious when you get down to it. And it also is more trusting to the audience in order to follow the story and the messages. There are films like Castle in the Sky and Grave of the Fireflies where listening to Japanese actors feels a hell of a lot more natural, but movies like My Neighbor Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service have voice actors who are so good at expressing their lines even when the dialogue is incredibly expository and spoon feeding, they make it sound incredibly natural. Hell, there are some English dubs of anime that you can't take seriously because some of the actors have been playing these exact same characters over and over again that it just seems kind of boring. For example, Stephen Bloom, one of the greatest voice actors ever, especially in anime. But he plays so many characters that are the exact same that they're not as interesting the more you watch them over and over again. Like Samurai Champloo. He is good in it, but it's not one of my favorite characters of his because I've seen that a million times before. And that's kind of how I felt listening to the actors in the Kiki's Delivery Service in Japan. It's not that the actors were bad, it's just I've heard these exact same voices in different films and maybe even done a little bit better. Like, for example, with the older ladies that Kiki helps out build a pie and then deliver it for their granddaughter. That was one of the best scenes in the Disney dub because Debbie Reynolds is this one old lady and Edie McClurg, the one actor that you see in so many movies but you don't know who it is, she's so great at making wacky characters feel so genuine and enjoyable. In the Japanese version, not only do they sound the exact same, but I couldn't really take them seriously as elderly eccentrics just because they don't sound eccentric, they don't feel eccentric. If anything, I'd say you should watch the Disney version of this film just for Phil Hartman as Gigi, because he was absolutely hilarious. I love how dry yet snarky he was as the sarcastic talking cat that isn't as funny as Salem in Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but it's basically the same type of character, and if you find that character archetype funny, you're gonna have a really good time watching him. In the Japanese version, Gigi's actually, I think, a woman, and there was nothing wrong with it. I just didn't think the lines were as funny as they were with Phil Hartman. Hell, what I said about actors repeating themselves over and over again, Trez MacNeille as a Sono, Trez MacNeille is so known for playing crabby old ladies like Mrs. Skinner in The Simpsons or insane evil old ladies like Hama in Avatar. In this film, she's a mid-30s, soft-spoken, gentle giant who's so lovable that this might actually be my favorite performance of Trez MacNeille just because it is that different, but she still rises to the occasion. As for the production values, as you would expect from a Hayao Miyazaki movie, the animation is bright, beautiful, and very colorful to look at. The flight sequences I didn't think were as significant as other Miyazaki movies, and I think part of that is because as opposed to just capturing Kiki in these bright blue skies, even though they do that every now and then, there are a lot more shots of her flying with the cities in the background to make it feel as if there's this sense of community that I didn't think was as visually pleasing as other films, but on its own, it still looks very nice. And Joe Hisashi's score really contributes to what type of setting this story is supposed to take place in, because as I was listening to the music, I'm like, does this story take place in Italy? Because there are various different Italian instruments like accordions or mandolins being played in the background that sound beautiful to listen to and really add to the emotional weight of each scene. But if there was anything I could complain about with this movie in regards to both versions of the film is that sometimes the expressions on the characters are a little too exaggerated to the point where they seem kind of unintentionally startling. I mentioned before that Osono is one of my favorite characters, and she still is. But there are moments where she has this laugh where her eyes are closed, and it just seemed very unnatural and kind of creepy, especially when it's just her and Kiki. It just felt awkward for whatever reason. Same with this one boy that Kiki has this friendship that may turn into a love interest. One thing that really stuck out for me, it wasn't the glasses, it was how wide his smile was that just made him seem like a total creep, especially with how many times he tries to approach Kiki and commend her on his flying, because flight is something that he's really passionate about. and I liked him for those moments. But not gonna lie, I thought his expressions were a little too over the top. And once in a while, with Janie Garofalo's Ursula, she does have a little bit of a snarky attitude that doesn't match the optimistic expressions that are drawn on her, but that's really about it. On the whole, Kiki's Delivery Service is a realistic look at what it's like to come into your own as a free-thinking, independent person. The voice actors all do a really good job. The animation is as great as always. The music sounds great as always. It's just a really good film, and for all those reasons, I'm going to give Kiki's Delivery Service a 4 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen Kiki's Delivery Service, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Be sure to stay tuned for more Studio Ghibli reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.